Welcome to Test Chamber, everyone. I'm Andrew Reiner, and I got Joe Juba sitting here.
Hey!
And Dan Reichert.
Hello, Andrew Reiner.
Hello, Dan Reichert. You are a ninja.
Yep, I'm riding. I'm playing right now.
You have Tina Turner's haircut.
So yeah,
cool
we've got Dan playing. I actually did the review for this, but it's difficult to talk and play this game at the same time. So...
Boy, I'm chopping him up
I
real
think he's
good.
dead, Dan.
Hang on. This is how I beat every single enemy in the
I
game.
think he's dead.
No, I'm not kidding. I beat this game over one weekend.
You
This is how I
broke
killed
it.
everyone. Is he dead? Wait, hang on.
All right.
Okay, nice. So what Dan is showcasing is actually one of the really cool things that Revengeance does, and that's this blade mode. So it's kind of
Blade mode? They couldn't come up with a better name.
Yeah,
than
they
that?
do just call it blade mode. It's kind of lame, but on the plus side, the blade mode is the gimmick that really sort of sold people on the game when it was first revealed. It's the sort of thing that lets you just chop things up into a bunch of different pieces. And in this game, what they use it for is like you chop arms and legs, and you basically like try to cut out the cyborg hearts of all of these soldiers that you're beating.
Hearts? I thought they were spines.
Oh, okay, spines.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah,
so if
You're a terrible doctor.
If you've never played a Metal Gear game before, this is a new wrinkle in the series. This is Metal Gear Rising, not to be confused with Metal Gear Solid. This is the first entry. It focuses on crazy ninja action rather than stealth, right?
Right. So it's technically a part of series canon. It takes place in the same universe and all of that as the previous Metal Gear games, but instead of being all stealth focused, and this one obviously is about ridiculous ninja action.
But you can still get under a box, right? If you want to.
Is that a spoiler? I don't know.
There's some kind of sneaky things you
never
can do.
know.
Like if you
Okay,
want to
yes,
jump
there
down
are.
off a thing.
There are cardboard boxes.
I'm winking right now, everyone.
So, this game stars Raiden, the hero of Metal Gear Solid 2, and then he showed up again in 4 as a cyborg ninja.
Sure.
And this
Spent a lot of time on an airplane and a bed moaning about his life in Metal Gear 4.
Yep. So this game takes place... nice. See?
I like doing that a lot.
This game takes place a few years after the events of Metal Gear Solid 4. So Raiden is a cyborg ninja again, even after he supposedly had a happy ending at the end of the last game.
Dan is like human, right? So how did he get his suit again? Or become a cyborg again?
You're asking questions that Metal Gear Rising is not super interested in resolving.
Okay.
In terms of being in the Metal Gear universe, this game does have some familiar themes and some familiar characters. It really is a standalone story in the sense that
Speaking of returning
you
characters,
get some returning characters like this big awesome Metal Gear Ray, but I don't want to say too much in case some people are really like looking forward to one thing or another. But what I will say is that like the big questions that you have as a Metal Gear fan, especially coming off of Metal Gear Solid 4, they're not really addressed.
But this is part of continuity, but they don't really continue that storyline. So it's kind of like a separate direction,
right?
Without saying what really happened.
Exactly, and there are references to like the Sons of the Patriots and sort of what war is like in a world without that system functioning and stuff like that. So those events have all happened. Also, everyone's a cyborg, so it's okay to watch them die.
Oh, it's gotta hurt.
yeah, I thought it was weird when all of a sudden a bunch of cops show up and I'm just supposed to like chop them into itty bits. And it's like, but they're cyborgs.
They're cyborg guys,
yeah.
so it's okay.
Yeah.
All right, that was super awesome.
Yeah,
so it has cool cutscenes like the Metal Gear Solid, obviously.
It does have some cool cutscenes. What I will say though is I think Konami sort of took to heart the criticism of 4 of the overlong cutscenes. Mm-hmm. There really aren't that many of them, and they're not that long.
And so you're not going to see eggs cooking in real time, right?
Yeah. I mean, and the game almost seems to even recognize what the story is. Like, there are times that it just sort of seems to shrug and be like, yeah, whatever.
Get a haircut. Oh, my gosh.
This character's really stupid, by the way, too. Like, all the new characters are pretty dumb.
Yeah.
Doctor.
Yeah, Doctor. This guy's name is Sundowner.
What?
Yeah. Apparently.
And he has infected nipples, I see.
Yeah, he's a cyborg.
Weird looking
Everyone's
dude.
a cyborg.
Yeah, I know Joe and I are both big fans of the Metal Gear lore and the story, but I don't think either of us really gave a crap about what was going on here.
No, and that's actually one of the interesting things. Like one of the surprising things for me as I was reviewing this game is like they're. Like, I am square, and you are too, Dan, squarely in the target audience for this game. I mean, like,
Yes.
we are big fans of stylish action games, like, Bayonetta, God of War, Devil May Cry. Like, we love those kinds of games, and we are both super into Metal Gear. We've played all of the entries multiple times, like, and for some reason, there's just something about this game that didn't quite fire on all cylinders for me.
And it seemed like a perfect marriage from the outset, right? Like, you have this character that you've seen in these cutscenes that's amazing, and you played as him a little bit in 4. Not to the degree you see in the cutscenes in Metal Gear 4, right?
You don't actually.
Or in
4,
Metal Gear 2,
but-
sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. But in 4, you see him in these amazing cutscenes.
Yeah.
And then you have Platinum Games, who did Bayonetta. You had people from the Devil May Cry team. Anarchy Reigns, they're all about combat, right?
Yeah.
So, what happened with the combat? Where did the combat maybe go a little wrong?
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw the announcement of Platinum Games working on this, I was thinking that this game was like Bayonetta, but with Metal Gear characters.
Right.
And that's something that in the trailers and stuff that they've shown, it's something that's a perception that I think they've cultivated. Dan is really going to town on Ray
Every
here.
single time I do Blade Mode, I go until they make me not do it anymore.
Well, yeah, which is awesome too, because in this opening level, they don't limit your blade mode, so
Yeah.
you can just do it all the time. It is eventually restricted, but anyway, this game is not just Bayonetta with Metal Gear characters. I would say where Bayonetta really distinguished itself for me is just the variety in the action, the array of special moves, the way that it's accessible when you start up, but then the more you play Bayonetta, the deeper you realize the rabbit hole goes on that,
Right.
And for a number of reasons, Rising for me just did not have that depth. It just didn't grab me in the same way. Which is weird too, because if you look at a list of features, it seems like it has everything you could want. It has, special moves that you buy. It has a bunch of different weapons that Raiden earns as it goes on. Like all of these things that make it sound like exactly the game it needs to be. And really what it ends up being is...
Sorry.
Oh, here he goes. Look at him.
God, okay, that part is really cool.
It's so cool.
That's like one of the coolest parts in the game.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, it's... yeah, I kind of forgot what I was saying, actually.
But it had all these
that's so
things.
rad.
It had the full list of things. Like,
Yeah.
if you read it on the back of the box, sounds great.
It sounds great. And then what ends up happening for me anyway, and Dan's played it too, he can maybe back me up, is that there's just something about the execution that does not have the sort of responsiveness, the precision, or the polish of a game like Bayonetta.
And I think one thing we both had a major issue with was we did not like the parry system. There's not a, God of War, you can just press the right stick and you
roll
Kratos
around.
is right
Yeah.
out of the way, New Devil May Cry, it's got that dodge button. You can just dodge out of the way of anything. It's just got the stupid thing where you got to press towards them and attack at the right time. And it's just a huge pain in the ass, and it's just not a very effective way of parrying or... I don't know. That was my
So
big
that
problem.
means the only way you can avoid damage is or that you have any sort of damage avoiding move is in direct response to an attack that's incoming.
Or you can sprint like this, right?
Or you can sprint to get out of the way, but oftentimes that's an even bigger problem because that throws you out of the thick of combat that
Right.
you're sort of trying to manage at the moment.
This part's really cool, too.
Yep, there's a lot of awesome stuff in this intro level.
Oh, it's right after I chop him up a little
Yeah,
bit. And some cool stuff happens.
even though I was, have some issues with the combat, there are some things. I mean, this game looks fantastic, and there's nothing that can take that away from it. I mean, we're playing on the PS3 version here, but I mean, it looks like it runs super smooth. The graphics look great. The technology to be able to chop all these pieces apart is pretty amazing too.
And even if it doesn't kind of stack up to these other games you're talking about, or the mechanics you're used to as a gamer, is it still fun?
Yeah, and it is. I guess for me, it lands more in the kind of fun that I have from just more simple, just basic sort of hack and slash games. It has more depth than something like Dynasty Warriors, obviously.
Yes.
Right.
But to me, the combat does not have that sort of that rewarding sense that something like Bayonetta does.
And Joe, I heard you talking in the office about being a little frustrated with the way you switch weapons. And how that's handled. Obviously, this is the very beginning of the game, everyone. So I don't think Dan has all the stuff unlocked yet.
No.
Yeah, we don't have it yet. Well, yeah. So what the? If you look at a game like, I mean, I not to keep referencing Bayonetta all the time, but like if you look back at a game like Bayonetta, or even like the Devil May Cry series, or God of War even lets you do this too, I think, where you can just sort of, if you have another weapon, there are ways that you can just sort of switch to that weapon on the fly. So you can basically, if you have multiple weapons, you're sort of using all of your different powers and integrating them into your combos. Yeah. And you can't do that in this one. You have to go, if you want to switch, you always have your katana, that if you want to switch your special weapon, you have to like enter a separate screen that you can only enter if you are like standing still. If you're in the middle of a combo or something, you can't go to change. Also, this part is super awesome.
Yeah, I was just thinking, we're being super down on this game and complaining about it, but if somebody's just watching this, it looks like the coolest thing in the world.
Where does it go? I mean, if the game stayed like this and the combat was simple and all that, that's fine, right?
Yeah,
it's such a spectacle. Does the game deliver on this high level at all times?
No, I mean, I would say that the intro level is the highest point in terms of the high octane, ridiculous stuff that's happening.
Yeah, like what we just saw with that Metal Gear Ray thing, that is like the biggest cool, like over the top, set piece moment type stuff you'll see in the whole game.
Yeah.
Like, there are boss fights, but a lot of times it's just like a guy your size that's really
Like
good
this
with a
guy.
sword
I mean,
or
like
something.
you fight Sundowner, and that's just they're very for lack of a better way, like they're very kind of mechanical boss fights. Like it doesn't feel like you're putting your combat prowess to the test. It looks like you are, like, okay, this is what his pattern is. You learn the pattern and you respond.
And I don't think it's coming across that you guys are complaining, but it's not quite where you'd want it to be. It's still fun, but it's just not quite that level that you expected.
Exactly. And like in my review, I give this game a 7.75 as a score, which to me, I mean, it's not a fantastic game, but it's fun.
Yeah.
And as a Metal Gear fan, I enjoyed seeing like Raiden in action again. I enjoyed finally being able to play him as a cyborg ninja instead of just having to watch him be awesome. But there is that element. I mean, the stuff like Dan said with the parrying system really just results. What it results in is a sort of fuzzy and imprecise combat system for me, anyway. And like a lot of your special moves rely on these contextual directional inputs that, because there are some camera issues, end up being unreliable also. So it just doesn't.
Now, does that become frustrating, or is the game a certain difficulty level that you could just kind of go through it and you're like, well, I got hit a couple times. I didn't quite get an S, but or is it on the other hand where you're dying a bunch?
I mean, it can get frustrating. It depends on what it depends on is the number of enemies that are on you. This is a game where if you get a lot of people on you at once, it gets very difficult to play.
That was gross, by the way.
Yeah.
What about all the good things?
Yeah, so I mean, it does get frustrating if you're trying to fight off a large group of guys. It's unnoticeable if you're against like 3 or 4 dudes, but it's a problem enough that it I don't know, like it just keeps combat from feeling like it really sings. Like all of the pieces,
Right.
like that feeling when all of the pieces just line up right. That just doesn't happen in this game.
And there is some depth to it. Maybe after this cutscene, we could take a look at the weapon upgrade system.
Yeah,
and kind of how that's handled, the currency, all that.
I don't know that we need to take it's not as much fun to just stare at menus, but I mean, yeah, you do
Speak for
get a
yourself.
chance.
Menu aficionado, Andrew Reiner.
Yeah.
Oh!
But you do have the chance to, for each of the weapons you get, you can basically buy like passive upgrades for them, and then Raiden also has skills that he can buy that are just like different moves. That, oh, by the way, if you're watching this, well, you are watching this, but if you're watching this and thinking about playing this game, what you need to do is like look at the help menu. From like you press pause and then go into help. I don't usually look like. Usually, I figure I know what's going on. I was having a lot of trouble figuring out how to do the moves that I had purchased, and that's the only place where you actually have a move list. And it's not labeled move list. It's just labeled help.
And then another piece of advice that I heard you talking about is if you set the difficulty up, you can't turn it back down once you start, correct?
Right. I'm pretty sure that if you start the game on normal, you can't be like, oh, this boss fight is too hard, and then put it down to easy.
And even if you beat the game on normal, you can't go to the chapter select and do them on easy.
Yeah, I think you have to unlock each chapter on each difficulty individually. So, that's something to consider. I would say though, like this game is not one that demands the precision of something like Bayonetta, and is not as difficult. And I mean, that's another reason I think why the combat didn't quite work for me, is it never really makes you plumb the depths of what you can do. I mean, if you want to experiment with all of these different combos, you can totally do that. And that's, and it's fun to see all the cool stuff Raiden can do. But it's not the kind of thing where it gives you a set of enemies that are only vulnerable to a certain type of attack that really forces you to like focus your effort and prioritize enemies and stuff like that. It's just a lot of times it's just kind of a horde of generic cyborgs that you have to work your way through. Well, I mean, is that fair, Dan? I mean, does that seem?
It's absolutely gorgeous. One last question for you, Joe and Dan. Yeah. So far, it's just been balls to the wall, just crazy action. Does it ever slow down? Do they give you different mission objectives, or is it just kind of like you brought up, a brawler where you're just beating the crap out of a bunch of guys and then move on to the next level, next boss?
There are a couple points where, like, you'll take control of something that's not Raiden and go around, or like there's a place where, there's some stealth where you can like jump down from a balcony and try to stab someone with this cool like foot blade thing. Like, there are little things like that. It's not constant, just triangle, square, square. It's not always.
There are a handful of sections that encourage stealth too. But I'd say that like those feel far more like the exception than the rule. It's not like this is a game that is expertly paced in terms of variety. You are, for the most part, walking into this sort of wide open arena, whether it's down in a sewer or out on some city streets or in a in an office building. You walk into a room, a bunch of dudes pour in, and you attack them.
Yep.
It's sort of, I mean, that's the basic note of combat. Not that that's bad for a game like this either, but that's really what to expect. They put a lot of effort into the sort of pacing, I think, of this first mission, and then it tapers off after this.
Yep.
So, from what you're saying, it doesn't, from what both of you have said, it doesn't quite live up to the legacy of Metal Gear Solid.
Right.
But it is a fun first entry in this series. It has some problems, but maybe worth playing if you're into the series, if you're into this type of action. Just don't expect fireworks all the way through.
Yeah. It's if you keep your expectations in check for this, and you're not expecting a story on the level of something like Metal Gear Solid 3, and you're not expecting combat as tight as Bayonetta, I think there's still plenty of enjoyment to be had with this game.
All right. Well, thanks for this look, guys. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Jason Ace Drager, for producing this. And thank all of you for watching. I kind of want to see where this goes, but we're going to end the video. You can continue playing it. It's out now on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Thanks for watching, everyone.